Previously on Relative Roads. Just kidding. Enjoy part 2 of my conversation with my dad, Rusty Haley. I don't know, I'm always a little weary of the next bump. You know, I get scared. I get nervous about
this may be my third discovery when it comes to dumb questions.
Okay.
What's to be scared about when it comes to learning? I'm suggesting a reframe.
Look, let me just say it like this. I have condemned my dog for having anxiety. And I have also done that to myself. You know, it's a language that I am trying to neurally alter through my own efforts. Because the interest in myself has also taken place for me. I also feel blessed in that way that, you know, some of this journey is recently relevant to you. Recent enough for us to sort of philosophize together in. That's a pretty unique situation. So, and I also like to stop and smell the flowers. So that's just such a beautiful thing. So how do I not feel as excited as I am sometimes? I don't know. Not that it has to go away.
What do you mean, how do you not feel? What does that mean?
I don't know. It almost seems like that there are so many wonderful things, beautiful things that sort of correct my perspective energy. I guess the way what I put my attention to seems to fuel more of the outcomes that are more desirable.
And undesirable. Mechanism works both ways.
Then maybe it is just a better perspective or a different perspective on the challenges that don't make them seem as scary as they used to.
So is this back to the fear and learning thing?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know what it is, honestly? I think it's like my relationship to my own emotions has changed. So a lot of the stories I find myself...
In what way? What discovery allowed that to happen? Or started that to happen? Or ended that happening?
Information about ADHD that allowed me to sort of have more compassion for what I've done so far to move through this existence. I say it like that because, you know, like you say, it's like the words you use to describe your story. Like that's kind of where you start.
Create your reality.
Yeah. So it's like the universe kind of saying, "Hey, man, it's okay. It's not your fault. Like you're off the hook. It's not your fault. You don't have to beat yourself up anymore because today you know something you didn't know yesterday."
So that voice right there, why do you give it the name of the universe?
Because it's like the God we seek. It's like talking to the miracle.
So where does that entity live? Universe, God, where does that thing reside?
The notion of it is sort of a full body experience. And I say it like that because there's language that happens in my body that travels to my mind and gets translated.
So the short answer is it lives inside of you.
Yes.
So if it lives inside of you, then could another name for universe be, or another name for God be, you?
Yes. Yes.
So it's like, it's not so much, another way of stating it is it's not the universe that's saying that, it's you that's saying that.
Yes. But it is basically
So when you say that, is that a act of ownership?
Yeah, you could say that. Yes.
So your journey has brought you to a place of not just discovery, but owning some benevolence towards that discovery.
Oh, yeah. And because I also know that the devil exists inside as well. That's an important thing for me to conceptualize. Is because, it's like the people who speed on the freeway, they are there whether you are or not. And they're there where there's traffic or not. It's just,
What's their reason? What is a potential reason for their being there?
they're on the other end of a prayer, is how I like to put it.
And the way I like to see it is they're presenting me with an opportunity to learn.
Yes, yes, yes. And that gives me permission to stay in the space with how I've known things to be and how I now know things to be. So it's kind of like, it's the education. It's the process of education. It's like, here is the new information. Here is the old information. It's not like I'm going to just throw the old out. This is going to be integrated in with this. This is the me that I.
So you're looking at your right hand.
Well, it's a visual. They're
the people in the room besides you and me can't see that.
Okay, so fair enough. All right, so then let me just describe what I'm doing, okay? So both these hands belong to the same person. And you've heard the expression, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And it kind of speaks to the idea that our minds are tricky.
Well, the flip side of that, of one of my favorite expressions, is there's nothing I love more than getting the left hand and the right hand in the same room and forcing them to talk to each other.
I thought you were going to get perverted with that, so I got nervous.
Well, that may be a perverted mental exercise in terms of opportunities you create for people to experience, because oftentimes, particularly in business and in work, our problems stem from the left hand not talking to the right hand. So oftentimes the quickest way to a solution is not to send an email or a text or a chat or even a phone call. It's for, and this goes directly back to coaching, it's for a coach to go grab the left hand from one end of the building, go grab the right hand from the other end of the building, bring them into the same conference room, close the door, and say, hey, we three are not leaving until this is resolved. Now get after it. And I'm here to help.
You know what I like to do for myself in sort of an internal scenario like that, right? So let's say I'm trying to align myself with an idea through action, and I'm in the boardroom with other parts of myself, and we're discussing this. What I sometimes like to do is go through the initial notion in your mind of reaction, and not in the sense that you go into that other space and project yourself onto someone else, but in the space that you're in, project that notion onto a safe surface of some sort. Write it down, text, put it in writing, write it out, but then take a step back and just let the emotions and time sort of exist. That's it though. But not really, like, don't change your routine just yet. You might have to after this analysis, but if you can afford the time to filter through your mind with a new idea or a new outcome, then you come back. For me, a high percentage of the time that I've done this, where I've written out an angry email or angry review of an old employer or somebody who I felt did me wrong in business, I'll go back periodically, because it presents this opportunity for pride in discipline, because that's rare for ADHD, and my experience specifically, for sure. But like, to go back and read what you wrote and the emotional side of it, and then to think how that would have served you or not served you, and the favor you did yourself by allowing the emotion to speak and then taking the wheel, as the driver, and you're not kicking yourself out or kicking yourself at all. Like the parenting quality of your internal dialogue, that's the thing I've been thinking, is everybody is a parent. Everybody's a parent. It's not a, if you have kids or not thing. It's like children are exposed to other adults, and that's an opportunity for them to help out, but there's that sense of uneasy, when you're trying to do something difficult, you always kind of feel like this, I don't know, like, you know what I mean? Kind of like a roller coaster effect where
I think there may be an opportunity to mistake emotions there. It goes back to the question, this physical sensation I'm having right now, do I want to label it as anxiety, or do I want to consider labeling it as excitement? I think we often mistake anxiety for excitement. And if you if you relabel the sensations, the physical and chemical sensations you're feeling in your body as excitement as opposed to anxiety, how does that change your experience? How does that change the next story you tell yourself about what's going on? Does your menu of options get larger and broader?
And see, this is where I think your talk on simplicity is relevant to what I'm essentially doing for myself.
Discovering.
Is taking it a day at a time and reminding myself through mantras that today is my success. And I will say that. And I will pray with gratitude out loud. Thank you, God. Thank you for this breath and these lights and these colors, and to really just like, this is my success. Today is my success. Because I think that's really what's happening. It's like, it's not about tomorrow getting here. It's about breathing in today and surviving the night and then reliving the miracle all over again tomorrow.
And the way that I do that is stepping up to the 30,000 foot level and looking at my life. Yeah. And realizing how good I have it.
Yeah. Yeah. I do that as well. Yeah. Yeah.
That seems to make it, that's a technique that I use that makes an awful lot of things, if not go away and disappear completely, then at least lessen significantly or appreciably.
Sometimes it's hard for people to appreciate what they have.
But this is where I feel good friends come in.
Yes. Well, and that your friends reflect what it is that you're seeing. I mean,
that's one way of putting it. Another way of putting it is one quality of a good friend is they reflect back to you not what you're seeing, but I guess maybe one way of describing this is sometimes in my coaching, I'll tell people that I'm coaching, here's something I want you to consider. If there are times when the things I'm saying do not make sense to you or do not resonate with you, here's a possibility I want you to consider. Consider that I may not be speaking to you, but I'm speaking to the person I aspire you to be. So I'm not reflecting back today's reality. I'm reflecting back either your potential or what I know, sense, and or believe is already and can see. I'm reflecting back what is already inside of you that you've lost sight of. That you haven't shined. There's a quality inside of you that you have not shined the light on recently, and you've lost sight of the fact that it's there.
What kind of resistance have you come across when you've attempted this?
The very first difficulty I run into, and this may be related to my own securities, but it's partially related to the visual feedback I get from people. So one of the first difficulties I run into is the reactions that I get when speaking these words seem to be related to, it almost feels like as if I'm speaking a foreign language and they're not getting it.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the first resistances I get is relates to introducing new ways of thinking. In order to introduce a new way of thinking, you have to be able to describe that new way of thinking. And that's a journey. So what I'm discovering is the simplest way of doing that is to break it down to its simplest parts. And in these COVID-19 days where everything is remote and not in person and not in the same room, I'm mourning the loss of things like a whiteboard or a flat surface and a writing utensil and a piece of paper where I can draw a picture and make the words that I'm speaking more tangible because they're visible. When I can do that, I can make things simpler because I don't have those things and I'm speaking in a foreign language in some cases. Words get lost in translation and therefore that feels like resistance. And when dealing with that, it's easy to get frustrated. The other thing is, an underlying factor here is I'm very passionate about this stuff. And so I want other people to get it badly. And that gets in the way sometimes. If I can find a place of grounding where I can just put the concept on the table and let them do with it as they please, that's the best place for me to be.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I get in my own way by being too passionate about this stuff
Mm-hmm.
and wanting other people to have what I have. And I know you've experienced that.
Yes. It's just this eagerness to share.
But this whole idea of doing this in a business setting is fairly new.
Yeah.
Being a coach in a business setting.
I think that's kind of what I was getting at as far as how new this is it's starting to get into a mainstream.
It is. Matter of fact, one of the things that turned me on and shocked me and really opened my eyes about the possibilities of this new way of being in business is Deborah, the person who introduced me to Agile. One of the things she said was Nike was so enlightened about their approach that to help her become more effective in her job of being a coach, they assigned her a coach to her 8 hours a day for 6 solid weeks to shadow her and observe how she interacted with people and then give her feedback on that. So the company was enlightened enough to see the value in hiring a coach, in having a coach for the workers, and then hiring a coach for that coach to become a more effective coach.
Mm.
So you have a coach in the workplace helping people to be more effective at communicating, relating, working, creating, collaborating. And then you layer on top of that a coach to coach that coach,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of the things that you have in an Agile environment where you have, they form teams in an Agile environment. And one of the positions on this team is called Scrum Master. The single greatest role of that person is to help the team become a higher performing team, getting better at being a team. That's one definition of a coach, is helping people get better at being a team.
Mm-hmm.
The second position in an Agile environment in a business is that of an Agile coach. So essentially you have a coach for the workers and then you have a coach for the coaches.
Okay.
That's a new concept in business.
Yeah.
And when I saw it's still cutting in and out.
Just get.
Can you hear it cutting in and out?
Yeah, that's
okay.
called Noise Gate. It's a feature on here. Let me see what it does. Well, you can see. Let me just show you. Let's see. See there you can hear everything in the background.
Mm-hmm.
But this way, if you kind of get a little bit more up on it or get it closer to your mouth, it'll pick up more of your voice. The further away you are, the more it has to.
I have to be careful. I may get orally excited here if I get closer.
I know. Again, we're going to skip over that part.
Okay.
Okay.
Now it's almost touching my chin.
Okay.
So we'll see how it goes.
Okay. I don't want to hear about ex-boyfriends or any of that stuff.
Okay. So this idea of having just a coach in a business, not a manager, not a supervisor, not a human relations person, but a coach assigned to help people. Basically, the simplest description is a coach's job is to help people think differently. The idea of consciously, intentionally, actively doing that, placing that element in a business got me really excited because I could see an increase in human potential, not just as an employee, but because you're applying tools that are directed at increasing human potential, the employee not only benefits, but the human benefits. And when the human benefits, they take those benefits home, and those benefits ripple outside of the workplace into the family life. And when good stuff ripples out of the workplace into the family life as a result of coaching, not only does the family improve, but the employee comes back in a different frame of mind the next day, and it ripples out from there. And so it's not only a rippling effect, but it's ideally, and when it's at its healthiest state, it's a spiraling upward effect where everyone is uplifted inside the business and out. Ideally, the end result is the customer is then uplifted because a better product is being produced,
right?
Something that meets their needs sooner, quicker, faster, more accurately, more compassionately.
So this seems like a no-brainer in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, that amazes me.
Okay, but you're inside of a business doing this while other business in that business is being conducted. Mm-hmm. Yet that strategy is not implemented in those areas.
It's rare to find a company who takes this approach wholeheartedly and applies it to all parts of the business. It's rare.
Yeah.
But it is recognized in the industry that is the absolute best and most effective approach, is when the whole organism, if you will, the whole organization embraces that approach.
Right.
But that's a massive undertaking.
So would you say that this process has a lot to do with a team that is there to manage problems emotionally and mentally efficiently?
No. The first thing I would do in that statement is take out the word manage.
Okay.
Because it's not about managing. It's about an act of discovery. So, for example, when you work with a therapist, does the therapist do any managing with you?
No, I don't think in the sense that they're going to...
They help you make discoveries.
Yeah.
That's what a coach in a business does. It's not about managing things. If anything, the coach is managing, it is maybe in a very poorly described way, managing how to learn new ways of thinking. And by that, I mean bringing into the environment information about new ways of thinking. So it's about exposure and not forcing.
Okay, so I have a question then. How do we apply this in, let's say, the retail space? How would this look in the retail space to you? Or
I think you gave a great example of it earlier, like with the bar. You talked about bringing in different employees or training employees differently. I'll extend it a little bit, and helping employees understand the dynamics of the retail relationship differently. That results in an experience that is enjoyed more by the customer and by the employee. So that's a creative business, learning and teaching how to think differently. Now, thinking differently one of the end results of that is in you managing differently. And I could easily make the argument that you do less managing, because when you learn how to think differently, your we'll just use simple terms, the quantity and quality of your self-management goes up. And when self-management goes up, external managers are doing less.
So what is what's the physicality of it, what you do? Like when you're in the room, are you just, excuse me, are you seated at a desk, in a chair? Do you float around? Like, are you doing a task? Like, how do you implement this Overwatch sort of like?
This is a good question, because in the coaching industry, one of the hardest things that people grasp for is, how do you measure the effectiveness of a coach? How do you know when a coach is doing their job? You're sitting in that chair right now across from me, probably thinking and listening. do I see any evidence that you're doing your job? I mean, you're not typing, you're not reading, you're not writing, you're not pushing a lever, a button, you're not giving orders. So how do I know that you, when a coach is sitting in a chair, staring out into space, one of the questions a less informed person might have is that person doing their job? Why are they just sitting there?
Mm-hmm.
A coach's job is to think, is to be curious, is to ask questions, is to listen. The largest part of a coach's job is listening to both. Listening is too restrictive of a word. The largest part of a coach's job is a combination of observing, which includes listening, being curious, and ultimately putting in front of a person or a group what's called in the industry powerful questions. Like, have you thought of, or have you looked at this angle, or have you considered, or have you investigated deeply enough? Have you asked enough questions around this? Have you asked the right questions? So a lot of what a coach does is not tangible. And what I'm learning in this book that I showed you earlier called The Answer to How is Yes by Peter Block, one of the statements or positions he takes is we often want to know how before we know the answer to the why. So we want to know how we go straight to the how do we do something rather than stopping at the question that comes before that, which is why we should be doing this. What matters is another good question. So you ask, what's the physicality? The physicality of my job, if we were outside of COVID-19 and the virus in 2020, and this is July, middle of July. If we were in a non-virus environment, it would be ideally, the whole team is in the room, in the same room. Everybody that's needed to be on the team works in the same room, without cubicles, without offices, just desk in an open room. And there's controversy and arguments around that, open space versus closed. But the ideal is close communication, very little interference in terms of one-on-one communication. The best way for me to communicate is walk over to you and have a conversation rather than picking up the phone or sending an email or a chat. When it comes to coaching, you put a coach in the room to listen, to observe, pay attention, to get curious about what's going on, to watch relationships, watch the nonverbals, the body expressions, the body language. I'll give you an example of something that a coach might get curious about, even in a remote COVID observation position environment where you're just on a phone call, on a conference call. Within the last couple of months, my team had an incident where 6 weeks ago, when they had one of their regular meetings, they decided to do a certain thing involving things called tags and IDs that would help them automate some of their work. 6 weeks ago, they decided to start using these tags and IDs. And so 6 weeks later, I'm sitting in a meeting with this team, and one part of the team says to the other part of the team, hey, when are you guys going to implement these tags and IDs so we can start our automation process? The leader of the subgroup in the team looks up at the guy that asked that question and says, what are you talking about? We started that process the day we decided to do it. And the guy who asked the question, when are you going to get started, says, oh, okay, well, I guess we can get started then. Now, I'm not a participant in the conversation, but I'm listening as a coach with a coach's ears. And the thing that, so the guy said, oh, well, I guess since you guys started 6 weeks ago, I guess we can get started on our part. The thing that shocked me and amazed me is no one asked the question, why did this happen? How did this ball get dropped? How did this communications failure happen? Nobody's curious about that. It's the job of a coach to get curious about that. Develop the skills to listen for that. Be curious about that because you have two seasoned professionals who this happened with. We lost 6 weeks of improvement opportunity because of that. How many other places has that happened?
Right.
How many other times has that happened? Is it happening now? Where is it happening now? How many times in the future is it going to happen?
Yeah.
The thing that a coach gets curious about is, why did that happen? What is this about? What are the parts and pieces involved? Let's dig into this. With the intention of examining what's happened, learning about it, and then asking ourselves questions: what needs to change in not how we do things, but in the nature of our relationships with each other that would prevent that from happening again?
So let me ask you something. In a job where it's your duty to witness and observe and strike at the moment's notice while you're watching other people perform as a team, you kind of have to have a level of clarity that fundamentally would sort of foster itself if you're living a very, I wouldn't say very, but a fairly balanced life. Who's checking in on you?
That's a good question. And so the position I was in when I described that story, I was the coach of the team, the scrum master. Who coaches me? The agile coach.
Okay.
So the coach of the coaches, so to speak.
So give me an example of a critical note given to you by your coach that would sort of emphasize how closely you're being coached and how closely you're coaching your people.
So a part of the Scrum process is to have recurring meetings, and a number of recurring meetings over typically a 2-week period, meaning our cycles of work go in 2 weeks periods. So we'll start the next process every 2 weeks. And within those 2 weeks, we have a standard set of meetings to hold. The very last meeting that's held within these 2 weeks is called a retrospective. The purpose of this is to look at not what we did, but how we worked together. The purpose of that is continuous improvement. So, one of the things you do in a retrospective is you talk about how can we improve? What's the next experiment we want to conduct in the next 2 weeks to address the things that we discovered as a result of going through the last 2 weeks? This is continuous improvement. So the Scrum Master facilitates the retrospective meeting for the team to learn and continuously improve. Coming out of retrospective, one of the questions is, what's the next experiment we want to run? The job of an Agile coach is to come to the Scrum coach, like my Agile coach, his name is Scott. Scott will come to me, Rusty, and say, Rusty, I had the privilege of sitting in and listening to your retrospective. I know that you guys came out of that with some stuff you wanted to experiment with. I also know that you did the same thing 2 weeks ago in your last retrospective. Talk to me about how those things went. Then talk to me about how over these next 2 weeks, besides keeping the team focused on doing the work that they need to do, how are you going to keep us focused on the current experiment they're running, about improving? What's the next thing they want to improve? How are you going to remind them on a daily basis to focus on that? That's how a coach coaches a coach. One of the common complaints in this environment that I'm describing is, we get together every 2 weeks and we talk about how we did these last 2 weeks, but nothing changes. The purpose of an Agile coach is to help the Scrum Master ensure that the team is running experiments, is changing. And so the Agile coach helps the Scrum Master maybe construct those experiments, helps the Scrum Master in reminding the Scrum Master, hey, this experiment is going on. How are you guys doing? Are you making progress? What are the results? Are you going backwards? So that's a way of a coach having the back of a coach who's coaching a team. Is what I find is, because we humans don't simply learn a principle, process, tactic, or technique and then do it consistently over time. The purpose of a coach's coach, is to help the team coach constantly be practicing what he's learned.
What's interesting is that, my understanding and relationship to the term coach, and let's say to the symbolism of a coach, all stems from school related things. Maybe there's a little more relevance in having a fitness coach. And the idea of a person supporting someone else amidst growth, let's just say, like, somebody who's helping another person lift a heavy weight. The level of performance enhanced by that support is, it's the difference between lifting a weight you never thought you could lift and lifting a weight that you only believed was the heaviest you could do. And when you have someone there to stand in that space to give you the safety to sort of embody the notion of strength more effectively than if you were to stand in that space alone. It's that human connection and the empowerment of it.
I think it's more than that. In addition to that, it is having someone outside of yourself observe yourself, and through that mechanism give you more data than you would otherwise have access to. Like tweak the angle of your back a quarter of an inch engages a different muscle, and that's the muscle we want to be targeting.
Yeah.
If we want to transcribe this into a business environment, one of the results, if you take it, do the gym comparison, one of the results in a business environment might be, I never knew I could have a relationship like I have with these people.
Yeah.
So one way of describing that is my goal in coaching a team, the end result is, let's say it comes time for you, for whatever reason, to leave the team. My long-term ideal objective is when that day comes and you realize you're now leaving the team, there are tears in your eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you never had this experience ever before in your life.
Yeah.
This kind of a quality, close, safe relationship.
Yeah.
And so there's a husband and wife couple, I think their name is Jim and Karen McCarthy. They did some studies in Microsoft with software programmers. And as a result of that, this is a Google-worthy phrase, they developed something called the CORE protocols. And if you listen to their podcast, one of the first things they talk about in their very first podcast is they share the observation that most people on the planet never, ever experience what a true team is.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so that's my objective when I'm coaching folks, is I'm constantly moving from different angles, inviting a team in that direction. And
I like that.
So I have to at least describe what's possible.
Different angles, inviting them in that direction.
Right. You can't push.
That's pretty cool.
You can't force.
Try a different angle, but...
Well, the art I'm finding is in crafting an intriguing enough invitation. How can I put this in such a way that it raises your curiosity about what's possible?
Mm-hmm.
Inside yourself, outside yourself, between you and me, between this team and other teams, this team and other parts of the organization that aren't operating the way we do. How can I take this in the outside world into my family and my neighbors, other people I relate to, other organizations, other efforts I'm involved with?
Mm-hmm.
How can I get that to ripple out into the world?
I think in terms of a connection quality, as far as the how, like how do I connect? I think that you kind of have to have that drive to want to help, to want.
So what you're talking about is before you have the how, you got to have the why.
Yeah.
The drive is related to the why.
Yeah.
Why do I want this?
This is why I became a fan of Simon Sinek. You familiar with his stuff? And this is actually what I came to understand leadership to be, was not telling people what to do, but to be in the space and to facilitate that with your being, and to put it into action, and to be the reflection. And leadership is a quality of a person. It's not a position, a status quo of anybody. It's the one who has the idea of a solution, but doesn't necessarily convey it in just words. Because it's like they can do it with words, but it comes with the work. It comes with the work and the reputation, to their advantages. I think when a leader type person has built that trust in people, there's a lot less second guessing, and so it has its own sort of fame-like quality. I think that becomes the new challenge for anyone who reaches that element.
One of the things in this thing called Scrum is it's intentionally constructed where everyone and anyone can be a leader in any given moment.
Yeah.
Because one piece of Scrum is intentionally constructed in such a way that no matter what you do on the team or bring to the team, or the reason you were hired, or the skills you bring to the team, in the Scrum guidebook, it says that no matter what you do on the team, you're all called the same thing. You all have the same title. So there's no lead this or senior that.
Yeah.
Or builder or tester or writer or producer. Everyone on the team the technical term is, everyone on the team is a developer.
See, this is an important piece of information. It's not about hierarchy at that point.
Well, then the reason for this is, from an accountability perspective, and results, the whole team is responsible for the results, not a tech or senior or lead or anything. Everyone, the whole team is responsible, not one person.
Let me ask you, do you think this is a way that the military could approach training as well? Or should?
I think this is the way that the military is.
Okay.
And the most popular, often pointed to example is the SEALs.
Yes, because they shine quite brightly.
And one of the reasons for that is they level the playing field.
Yeah.
And in most circumstances, it doesn't matter whether you're an enlisted or an officer.
Yeah.
Everyone is accountable at the same level.
Yeah.
And carries the same weight.
Mm-hmm.
And they spread skills across the whole team so everyone can do multiple jobs.
Yeah.
So,
wow, that is such a great...
When you have those elements in the environment, it becomes more and more difficult to point the finger at one person.
Absolutely. And more difficult to leave people behind.
And the failure is the teams.
Yeah.
It's not the leaders.
Yes. This is why these guys are starting to get mainstream in terms of popularity, is because they confidently, and they command respect. The SEALs have got that thing going, that reputation, so some people fall in line easily and say, hell yeah, he's got it down. I'm going to do it his way. And it is the yearning, I think, I admire that.
Other key pieces is flexibility and open-mindedness. Open-mindedness.
See, I think that's something I didn't quite understand fully about what you do. And that is that it's a level playing field in the room. Scrum Master, Agile Coach, those are leadership terms. But in the description you just gave me, it changes my perspective. I'm not looking at the room like you're some substitute teacher trying to do a good job so he can get full time.
Right.
Because that's kind of what it starts to feel like.
Right.
You're just there as support.
One One commercial way of describing it is to help every single person on the team be their best.
Yeah. Most people would love.
Now, imagine not just having that principle in the business and being promoted in the business, but hiring someone whose job that is.
Yeah. That's got to be
coach.
Such a dopamine rush.
That's what turned me on. That's what kicked me into this career field, this third career.
Yeah.
Is those potentials.
So one of the last times I came by and we had lunch, and you were kind of coming out of an exciting morning because you were,
Being a coach.
yeah, trudging around in your piles of paperwork trying to figure out who the hell am I in here. And, but you've obviously gotten a little bit of a handle on things. You feel like you've made some great progress. In what ways? And also, was that sort of that fun energy, that nervousness, was that just kind of you in the midst of this opportunity and again, excited, right?
It was a lot of things.
Yeah.
There were a lot of layers to it.
Yeah.
Because what a lot of people don't know is it's the first time I've ever performed the job.
Ever what?
Performed the job.
Oh, and therein lies the vulnerability.
This is a brand new career field. There's something else that people need to understand. The way I describe what a coach is, more specifically, the way I describe what a Scrum Master is. Most people, first you need to understand that in the Agile industry, the position of Scrum Master is poorly done, poorly implemented, and severely misunderstood.
Okay, fair enough.
Because most of the people in business and in the industry come from, the way the industry describes it is, they come from a command and control world.
Yeah.
Which means you have a leader telling people what to do.
Right.
Sometimes that shows up in the form of a project manager. So that's a legacy of people doing that style.
Mm-hmm.
Very hard to break out of legacies. So when you hear the term Scrum Master, what a lot of people think is that's just a new title for a project manager or a leader who tells people what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, that's what I mean when I say the position is implemented poorly. Because this new way of thinking, this new dynamic of hiring a person to help people become better employees, better humans, and better team members, that is so radical that it's difficult for people to adjust to. So I've had conversations with people in business, like for example, in even job interviews that I've done. I've described what a Scrum Master should be versus what a Scrum Master is, how a Scrum Master is currently used in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been interpreted as arrogant. I've been interpreted as not knowing what I should know. I've been seen as being wrong. And I've been I've been heard as saying to the business that I'm interviewing for, this is why some people have interpreted it as, you're doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, because that I didn't get the job. But part of the reason for that is, and this is a multi-level thing, a multi-layered thing. Part of the reason for that is 9 times out of 10, if not greater, the way that the Scrum Master position is used is wrong or not healthy. So in other words, it's basically just another name for a person acting as a project manager or acting as someone who's going to tell you what to do. And so most people will see Scrum Masters operating that way and think that's what a Scrum Master is. Mm-hmm. Well, the truth is, and here's this is a dynamic that plays out in all areas of life. If the only thing you've seen is a poor implementation of something and you think that that's the way it's supposed to be or normal, and no one's ever demonstrated in front of you the way it should be, how are you going to react to someone who's telling you you're really not doing it right?
But this is leadership's journey, right? This is the burden, is your challenge is great and you're alone. It's not about, I think because like you're kind of describing where we're coming from and where we're going with this, and that the title of this and the perception of this title isn't necessarily evolved yet.
What I'm describing is something that's not right or wrong. Mm-hmm. It's very common in the middle of an evolutionary transition.
Yes. Yeah. But that's your challenge, is to mold it.
Yes, and I think my challenge is to first understand the dynamics of what's going on,
Yeah.
and that this is not about right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's about where we are in the evolutionary process.
Yeah.
So there's no point in
Right.
spending any brain cycles in describing something as right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Where you want to spend the brain cycles is, okay, if I look at the breadth of this evolutionary cycle, where I came from, where I am, and where I want to be,
Yeah.
the brain cycles I first have to expend are, where am I? Where am I going? And how do I need to course correct to get to where I want to be on the other side of this evolution?
Yeah.
So I have some sense of where I want to be, but almost always I don't have a clue about how to get there. I've got to dance and navigate my way there.
This is good because it puts you in the room with everybody else.
Right.
And, you know, that is the thing. It's a shared space in terms of the vulnerability aspect and the
And
the
learning.
accountability,
The learning.
right? Is because in a traditional setting, as far as job interviews and the process of interviewing, and I've seen this close enough to understand that people will say and do what they think you want them to say and do. And they'll do this for a number of weeks as they get hired and work their way past probation. But then a lot of times there's a point where they just turn into what they really are, or, you know, sort of get laxed.
Not what they really are.
Mm-hmm.
That's a misstatement. It's not
Okay.
what they really are. It's what they've been trained.
Okay.
It's what they've been told, taught, or trained to believe that they are.
And enabled.
But the lie, yes,
Mm-hmm.
enabled in that lie.
Mm-hmm.
The lie is, this is not who you are. This is not about who you are.
Mm-hmm.
This is about who you've been told that you are.
Mm.
It's not about who you are.
Okay, fair enough on the terminology, but you know, to the point of the story is this environment that you're working in, it holds people accountable to who they express themselves to be in this career.
The way I choose to look at it is, if you want to go down the accountability path and express it in a really coarse way, it holds people accountable to their potential.
Yeah. But then that sort of helps mitigate bad habits that people have.
Moving away from
Yeah.
towards different habits.
Well, because you're in this intimate, hard work. Well, I want to say hardworking, but thought-provoking space. That
thinking is hard work.
fair enough.
Deep thinking is hard work.
Yeah.
Changing the nature of your relationships is hard work.
Yeah.
I mean, there's another incident recently where I had a member of the team who felt that another member of the team was not listening. And the listener was a member responsible on the team responsible for designing the product.
Mm-hmm.
And the speaker, or the person I was coaching, was a member responsible for testing the product. And the tester was trying to get a point across to the designer, so to speak. And the tester felt that he wasn't being listened to. And so my coaching was not how to solve this problem, or not how to get yourself listened to, or not how to get your point across. My coaching for the person I was working with was how to go about changing the nature of your relationship with this other person.
Mm.
So that not that you solve the problem, but that the problem doesn't occur again.
Mm-hmm.
So change how you relate to this person. Don't just solve this one particular problem of getting this one particular point across. Change how you relate. That's one of the jobs of a coach.
The other interesting thing, I think, is if you've been working with any number of people who have been in this business long enough now to get some basic muscles and flexibility in terms of their methodologies and how they go on about digging deeper into their own psyche and how they share that and, you know, develop these things together. Because I imagine that it's constantly like updating your system. You're optimizing for work. Like, and you bring this shit home and then all of a sudden everything's fucking organized and not necessarily in the physical sense, but you just you know things because of the closer look at systems, the deeper look at systems, basically.
Yes. And there's two interesting points there. One is the things that a coach teaches are in no way specific to the business. So you hit the broad spectrum of all humans in all situations. So these are transferable skills. It's transferable knowledge down into the depths of the business, outside of the business, into the family, into other relationships that you have. That's the first thing. And you use the word systems. It's very important for a coach to have an understanding of what systems are about. There's this field of knowledge called systems thinking. And understanding that when you change, that a system is a system of systems. And that when you change one small little cog in a system, you change the whole system.
Yeah.
So, and these system dynamics don't just occur in business. They occur in family.
Yes.
And in all of your other relationships and communications.
This was the government at home conversation we had. Yes.
Right. So these are transferable skills.
Yeah.
So the impact I'm having as a coach in a business affects families.
Yes.
That's what I'm after.
Okay.
I'm after those kind of ripples.
Fair enough.
Because I'm not just affecting an employee, a tester, a designer, a developer. I'm affecting a father, a mother, a brother, a sister.
Right.
I'm also affecting grandmas and grandpas and grandkids. So the impact I can have can be on generations.
So would you say that that's really what you were kind of tapping into when you mentioned earlier that that you stop and appreciate what you do have, and to have a job with that kind of meaning and a noble cause and amidst a pandemic, I mean, it perceivably doesn't get much better than that. But I do have a question. You know, in this kind of environment that you work in on a regular basis, how do you keep from not overworking or overtraining or over criticizing, or what do you do to make yourself better as a coach if you are so inspired to do better, to get better, to offer more of what you are? What are the practices that you do now that you're in this new career? You're developing a new routine of self-development. So I'm curious, like, are there new habits? You're an avid reader, obviously, always have been. Are there a different style of books? Do you read science fiction books? This interest in people? Do you venture into other artistic measures of expression and, so on and so forth?
Well, I'm fairly new at it. I've only been studying this stuff for 3 years. So I'm not as broad as the description utilized in the question. So one of the words you used was related around artistic and creative. I do read a lot. I'm very passionate about this stuff. I'm very self-taught. I have gone to some courses and stuff. Spent an awful lot of time around people who also do this, meetups and stuff. I have friends who are equally passionate about this stuff. We have interesting conversations. I stay immersed in it. I'm constantly learning. Constantly observing, being curious about things, looking for new ways to see things, new ways to communicate, new metaphors, new ways to describe. Sometimes I'm overly intense about this stuff, overly focused.
How about this? Let me ask you, what could you do?
Well, I don't know that I need to be doing anything different other than the physical health aspect, getting healthier, getting a healthier body, because that'll produce a healthier mind, which allows me to be more grounded and more effective.
Didn't want to ask outright, because it's just not something you blurt out at people. I've learned that the hard way. But it is something to talk about. And maybe I'm obliged as your son to open this can of worms, but for the sake of the authenticity of self-betterment and coaching and supporting other people and fostering space for growth. And I want to say that I don't say or bring these things up to cause pain or psychological.
So just ask the question.
Well, hold on, because I'm trying to be classy about this, okay? And also I'm not trying to. I don't want to be shoving my health down your throat either. But because leadership and because of what the nature of what you do and the clarity you need to have and the energy that would, almost certainly enhance all the possibilities. It just, at the end of the day, it's the go-to for, to answer any of your own issues. And here's the real question is like, how do we make that change? How do you make that? How have you made that change before? Have you succeeded? And what is it about this career with such a meaning in it that still doesn't contain the fire, let's say? And mind you, like I understand that you're an older gentleman, that, you have whatever you have going on that I don't know about. There's that bag of tricks too. So like, and not to make you feel bad, but what about that? So how are you intending on addressing that? And have you set anything in motion in regards to that?
So let's get real with the question.
Okay.
The real question is, so you're sitting across the room from a fat guy. The real question is, how could you possibly think that you have your shit together enough to coach other people if you can't even get your own shit together?
Yeah, more or less, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If other people were in the room, they would be wondering the same. They may be wondering the same thing, or at least
Sure.
observing the same dynamics.
Sure.
So I'm probably 100 pounds overweight.
Okay.
This is a question that I think about a lot, and it kind of has to do with something called the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And here's what I'm discovering. This is a multi-layered thing.
Sure.
And here's some of the things I'm discovering.
Okay.
What makes you a good coach for others may not make you a good coach for yourself, and the reverse. What makes you a good coach for yourself may not make you a good coach for others.
Yeah.
There's that part.
Okay.
Another piece of this is maybe the ultimate destination of the best coach is that you're a good coach for yourself and that you're a good coach for others. I don't know. But what I think I know to be true is I don't know that you have to be the best coach, which I just described as a combination of two, to ask good questions. I think a huge aspect of being a good coach is asking good questions. In the industry, they talk about asking powerful questions.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the simplistic descriptions of that is you ask open-ended questions, not closed-ended questions. So a closed-ended question can be answered yes or no. An open-ended question can't be answered yes or no. You have to give more detail.
Mm-hmm.
A powerful question is an open-ended question that is pretty deeply insightful and or exposes things that a person might not have otherwise considered. So another way of saying that is you asked a powerful question. I think when deciding on a coach, that's something you need to look at, is their physical fitness. but I don't think it's the only thing. And I think we are a world of exploring extremes. So I think you and I could probably identify 100 physical fitness coaches that would make lousy otherwise coaches.
Yeah, I follow.
So I don't know what the right mix is. I don't know if there is a right mix. And I've often looked at, like, say, fat doctors.
Right.
And the question pops into my head, what gives you the right, and that whole road.
Sure.
But I'm wondering if that's throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah.
So maybe a better question is, who do you think you are, or what gives you the right? But maybe a better question is, how can I benefit from what you have to offer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Regardless of where you are in your own evolution.
Yes.
So another way of looking at that is, we talked about Tony Robbins and earlier before we started recording, and Tony Robbins being an example of someone who's not a guru, but who's further down the path.
Yeah.
So if you look at someone who's further down the path than you are in one aspect of life,
Mm-hmm.
like, say, the ability to ask powerful questions, a reverse of that is judging a person by their weight and discounting everything they have to offer because of that.
Yeah.
So it occurs to me that when I look at a person as a whole, it is probably, one way of describing it is they are a person of many paths. And on some paths, they are farther down the road than I am. And on other paths, I'm farther down the road than they are.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the most beneficial question is, how can we benefit from looking at all of our paths, and how can we mutually benefit and find advantages in what we have in common, find advantages in where each other is farther down a path than we might be. Talking about this, that may be another way of describing the village, is bringing all people together and looking at all paths and discovering what changes need to be made on either side of the equation, be it the person that's on the left-hand side of the path, which is the early part of the path, or the person that's on the right-hand side of the path, which is the more experienced part of the path. Ideally, we would bring all of our paths together in the same room, identify them, learn about them, validate them, examine them, be curious, and then ask questions. How can we all benefit from everything that's in the room? And in what ways? What can we get curious about here? What's possible? Instead of looking at a particular aspect of a person, a particular path, and judging the whole by that one path. And so I posted recently on Facebook and LinkedIn something about I'm beginning to suspect that one of the secrets to good relationships is seeing the whole person in the now rather than one path of a person in any given moment. So always seeing the whole person. Like, while you were out taking a bathroom break, Barbara stepped in and shared with me that she was upset with me for doing this long, us spending this time together. Because she didn't know how long it was going to take, and she had told me that she had the massage therapist coming in. That's why we had to move to a different room.
Mm-hmm.
So from her point of view, her plan for her day and her sense of direction and her awareness of what her environment was going to look like in any given hour over the next 8 hours changed when you and I inserted ourselves into the environment and did our thing. Well, while you were out, she stepped in the room and shared that with me. Well, I could choose to look at her being what I call fill in the blank, being wrong, being right, being upset, being warranted, being judgmental, being harsh, pick whatever word you want to use. Or I could choose to step back and see the whole of her and stop judging about this one particular comment or this one particular position taken, and recognize that if I step back and see the whole of her, that changes the nature of the story I'm writing about this.
Well, it's so I've realized that our beliefs about what it is we're doing with certain aspects of our lives are, when they're voiced, sometimes it's like somebody on a loudspeaker on the path that they're on, trying to describe how things are going. But the truth is that your priorities are different than mine. That doesn't make you irresponsible. That's what you're saying. And I agree with that. I also come from that perspective of open-mindedness, and, I can value whatever exchange this is going to be. And again, without the whole good or bad label, like, this is just a moment in time that I will experience and you will happen to be there. So I happen to subscribe to that, the notion that there's value beyond what I see. But the question isn't what others' perspective may be. The question is, what is your perspective? And, you've kind of given me...
I think there's a better, deeper question there, a more refined question.
Sure.
The question is not, what is my perspective? A more effective, powerful question, if you will, is, out of all of the perspectives I could take, what is the perspective I want to take for the greater good?
Yeah. Yes. Well, okay. So let's just tap into that. What I want to ask you. Like, it sounds like you're trying to help me ask you the question I want to ask you. So I'll take a bite out of the elephant and just say, that your physical health could impact your job that you care so deeply about. And when I ask you if you have a plan to change that, you gave me an answer of what people should take into consideration when observing you. And the challenge is, Dad, let's whatever it takes, together or not, let's just look at the future that way. Because let's see. I'm so proud of who you are. Always have been. You're as big a nerd as you sound on this fucking podcast. And I absolutely love you for it. Haven't always understood you, but now I understand more than I have before. And, I relish the fact that we can have this time together. I would relish the fact that one day you could be great grandpa and we could be great papa and young papa. Fucking, that's a rock star status as far as I'm concerned. If two generations or multi-generations are able to figure out how to get past the fucking 80s and 90s, we're kicking ass. So, vitality's the big question. That's the elephant. It's like, that's the priority in the home outside of what you do for a living. And that if you did that right, what you do for a living would take the fuck off. I mean, you come off cocky sometimes, but you're sure because you fucking do the work. You're the research, and you look at it, and you're like a spreadsheet in your mind, and you have this ability to sort of detective information. Like, you're a researcher by nature. It's just how you are, and you're, like you said, self-taught, and of course you're further down the road than many, many people I know intellectually, and like I said, I'm trying to be careful because I've found something that may not work for somebody else, but I'm just having the experience.
So this all relates to
me and my selfish need for you to be here.
No, it's more about, it's like anything in life, it's multi-layered.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the layers is you're asking me a question
Mm-hmm.
and you want to hear answers from me. The truth is the answers you're seeking for are the same, and the reasons you're seeking are the same as they apply to you
Mm-hmm.
as they do to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So one way of answering that question is look at yourself and your own reasons and recognize how much everyone has in common, and there's your answers.
Yeah.
That's part of it. The second part of it goes back to the comments I make around journey and path.
Mm-hmm.
Who is anybody to say this isn't my path?
Yeah.
And so when you start going in that direction, you start getting into the words right and wrong,
Yes.
healthy, unhealthy. And I don't think I would want to be the designer of anybody's path. So one interesting exercise might be, and you're doing this now, today, because of your interest in this stuff, but who's to say how long it's going to last?
Yeah.
So one way of doing this exercise is turning it back around to yourself.
Totally.
And that's true of any question,
Yes.
because one of the things I'm discovering is when you discover the answers, you'll start radiating them and modeling them, not preaching them
Yeah.
when you internalize them.
Yeah.
So what the things you see in me and admire in me may be the result of me doing that work, internalizing it, and then radiating it out.
Yeah.
But that's on one path.
Sure.
It's not on all of my paths.
Right. Right.
And I don't know what a human looks like who is truly radiating on all of their paths.
Yeah.
I don't know if there is such a living being.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah.
So as we move through life, I think we radiate in different parts on different paths.
Yeah.
We make progress on different paths. I don't know that we would complete any given path in a lifetime, but we would certainly be able to notch off a piece of the journey. But I think the single greatest thing I'm grateful for is that it is a continuous journey. And that satisfies my desire to always be learning.
I think that's the commonality that
Well,
we need. We've inevitably come into.
now it is.
Yeah.
Because there were times in our lives when we weren't interested in learning.
Sure. Sure. Maybe not in the same way. We were just not in the same way.
Well,
I was a more hands-on. You liked the scripture. You liked the book. You liked the written word. That was your approach.
Well, having some talks with people about teenagers recently, I think teenagers' years, on one side of the coin is the time when we're least interested in learning, but on the other side of the coin is the time when we're learning the most.
Yeah. That side gets pretty ugly sometimes. Well, you know what? I had other stuff.
Is there anything else that jumps out on your list that's a
man,
knockdown? That's got to be knocked down.
That was good though. That was, did you see the SNL thing where they did a podcast with the dad, and it was this. It was like, yeah, it was like an audio clip of two grown ass men trying to tell the truth to each other, and I didn't watch it because I was ashamed because I wanted to do that, and they did it first. Anyways, whatever. I'm doing it, and I don't care. I wrote down here coronavirus digital newbie. Like that was your, because I was trying to say you were like entry level, but you're not. Well, I guess kind of are, right? Mm-hmm. Scrum Master. Anyways, that was just a term. And then I was saying like what I thought, what I noticed when you were working or in the space early on, it's like you seem like a teenager trying to like get his homework together. And
well, you have to realize I stepped into a situation that I've described a few times here in this recording. I was very intimidated. There were some things I'd never used before, some things I'd never done before. Now I've gotten much better at both of those things. But when I stepped into the job, because I replaced a guy. It's funny. I talked about what a good Scrum Master looks like and how Scrum Master is typically used. A good Scrum Master is focused on the team. How a Scrum Master is typically used is as a project manager to make sure shit gets done. So I focus on the former, how to help the team get better, not how to help them do work, but how to help them get better. That's not where most Scrum Masters are focused. And that's why I say the industry abuses Scrum Masters, is they put Scrum Masters to be in charge of seeing that the work gets done, when really a Scrum Master's job is to help the team improve. So the person I replaced was an expert in getting things done, in getting people to get the work done. And that's not how I work. So because of that, he was an expert in using some of the tools, was a whiz kid at it. I didn't know the first thing about it. So I was really intimidated. I was scared whether I could do this job or not. So that was where I found myself in the beginning. Now I'm getting pretty darn good at it with the tools. And I'm also still resisting feeling what he used to do, which is tell people to do the work. I don't operate that way. But that's how the team is used to operating. And they want that out of me, and I'm not giving it to them. And that's causing some tension. So, and it, out of my own insecurities, it makes me fearful of people thinking that I don't know how to do the job. When the truth is, I'm doing the job that they've never seen.
Yeah.
I'm doing it the way it's supposed to be done.
Gotcha.
Which is focusing on the team and not the work.
So suffice to say, this is after you've been in your lab for 3 years or however long, and with the notes that you've made and the notions that you've come across, this is what you're trying to implement. Is based on your research in the lab. You see the efficient, let's say, pattern, and you're trying to implement that.
Instead of efficient, I would say I see the effective patterns.
Okay.
Because they hired me not to be efficient. They hired me to be effective.
But you know what? You're having to play FBI negotiator all the way through this. So it's a win-win for you. It's uncomfortable, but that's good.
It's a place to grow.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad that it's not all cookies and rainbows. Yeah. But that's wonderful about new jobs, is you kind of have that, ooh, what's going to happen, So that's good. That'll keep you young and, vibrant. I want to save this for another time because I want you to be able to kind of delve in and go back. But the whole time you lived in San Francisco, because with the way your mind works and to be in a environment like that, there's got to be a lot of analytical sort of breakdowns of some of the things that people who live in those cities take for granted. So it'd be kind of interesting to hear a researcher personality type describe their
It was like attending a parade every day.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fascinating.
So, but let's save that because you've got some really good stuff about that. Okay, I'll leave those.
What are the teasers for next time?
Okay.
To bring the listeners back.
All right. So I want to go into your history a little bit more, your military history, your childhood history, as far as, growing up in Colorado and your influences as a child, the things you loved, the dreams you had, I want to understand where you came from before you got off a plane in the Philippines. And then I want to talk about what that was like to show up in this foreign land at that time. Yeah.
19-year-old.
19. I wrote 18, but 19.
A 19-year-old virgin.
Yes.
In a lot of ways.
So, again, I think that's another...
So I'll leave it to you to develop the questions.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And then... Yeah. Oh, and then I can still ask this question, so I will. But I wanted to highlight that you went from tech support to agile, basically. So the software industry is not totally unfamiliar, which, we could probably talk about that too, how that may or may not help your case. But, and then I wrote down here, knowing what you know now and what you would tell your younger self, but we talked about time travel and how that doesn't really make sense to contemplate anyway.
Well, there is one exception.
Okay.
If you want a Google worthy phrase, it would be start with something called timeline therapy. And the very basic description is, and you do this, the one way that you can do this is physically, like in a hallway or a parking lot or whatever. I've done it in college courtyards before. where you lay down pieces of paper that are markers in your timeline that can be years or events or whatever. And let's say you want to do some trauma related work, heal some trauma, heal the child within you, the pieces of you that are underdeveloped. A simple description of timeline work is you pick something you want to work on. Maybe it's something you're dealing with today, but the very first time you experienced it, and you have to give this some thought, the very first time you experienced it was way back in childhood. So in timeline therapy, you can walk yourself back into your past to the very first time you experienced this thing, and you look at it from there. And then you walk back to the present, and then you walk yourself back into the past. So the first time you do it is a process of discovery. So you're doing this with a coach. So one way is the coach will say, well, you're dealing with this today. Think back, when was the first time you have felt this? So we physically move your body backwards in time on this timeline, and we ask the question, is this the very first time? Well, no, it happened earlier than that. Is this, move back again, is this, do that to whatever it takes to get to the first time you felt this.
Mm.
Then you stay there, and you look and feel and ask in a light, not heavy trauma re-inducing way, but in a light way, what was it all about? Then you walk yourself back up to today, process, you look back over that and process, gather whatever information there is together about that. And so in your timeline, you're in the present. And then you go through another iteration of this, but this time you walk back with that child, successfully getting younger, as an adult. So you're walking back into time with your younger self and as being the adult support person for that self. And you go back to that first time that you ever experienced that with the support of your now adult self and all the skills and experience that person has. And you help that underdeveloped part of yourself process that. And then you move forward piece by piece in time. And going through that experience, you get curious about what is there available for me to learn? How can I reprocess this experience? How can I rewrite this story, or at least re-understand it in a way that can be more supportive, less impactful in a non-beneficial way? And what can I learn from it? You know, you and I talked about a while back doing job interviews and stuff, and I described to you that one guy asked me to put on a piece of paper what my career journey was like, what that looked like, just on one page. And it's like a stock chart. It's got its ups and its downs. And then when I went through that process, I just, one of the things I discovered is I could see visually, I made tangible my highs on that chart and my lows, because you have a zero line of normal, and above the line is your highs and below the line is your lows. I could see how far up and down I went and how many times I went up and down. And one of the things I got out of that is how resilient I have been. That was a very powerful lesson. And what it helped me is I think back to that when I'm in a down period and I don't know what to do and I'm in a, oh, woe is me kind of place. I remember the picture of that chart and how resilient I had to be to create that chart.
Yeah.
And one of the ways I expressed it to somebody a few months ago was when I think back about what I've accomplished, it makes what I'm facing today a little less intimidating. Because I know when I look at that picture, I've beaten every single odd that I've faced.
See, this is the thing about what I was saying about getting to 40 and then discovering clarity or finding some kind of clarity through not any one specific tool, but just the accepting the responsibility that because I was aware of these problems, that
on one level,
but you know, again, this is a process over time, but the thought, the conceptualization of this idea in me is the moment that I happen to hold myself now accountable, is that, okay, that's happening now. We're looking at that. We know that we have A, B, and C tendencies. This has been a detriment for long periods of time. And because of the reflection of things other people in life have shown me, is I've got some good qualities that could set some momentum in whatever I choose to do with it, let's say. However, whatever these habits are have been a detriment to my success in at least creating the opportunity consistently. And so, because I started this podcast before I started any other thing that I'm doing now as far as treatment or support, psychological support. But it was like I opened something in that exception of responsibility. It was like, okay, well, you are aware of these things. Now, who's going to fix it? No one's going to come and drag you to a doctor and have you diagnosed for shit they can't even get out of you without you saying. So either you do that for yourself or accept this reality as it is. And it sounds like you're daydreaming about a lot of shit that you're not doing, but want to be doing. So it was kind of like this coming to terms with this cycle that I'm in, and am I going to do anything about it? And I always kind of related the ability to see that and make a change to moving several times throughout my life. And
well, when you get to the question in the journey, when you get to the question of, am I going to do anything about it? I think the question that needs to come before that is, why? Or do I really need to do anything about this? The question that needs to come before that is, what are the beliefs underpinning that something needs to be done? The question that comes before that is, when I look at these beliefs, if I ask the question, is that true? What's the answer? And so this takes you, if you want another Google-worthy phrase, this is Byron Katie, a woman, Byronkatie, I believe. She produced something, another Google-worthy phrase called The Work. And it's a series of 4 to 6 simple questions. One of them, I think the first one being, is this true? And so that's a very simple way of examining your beliefs. So when you find yourself in a place of, I need to change this, maybe the first set of skills you need to learn is learning how to back up from that question to some previous questions like, does this need to be changed? Why does this need to be changed? What are the beliefs underneath the why? What are the beliefs underneath my believing this needs to be changed? Mm-hmm. And when I look at those beliefs, I need to go through a process of asking, is this true? I need to go through a process of asking, where did this belief come from? Mm-hmm. Is this some belief that somebody gave me, implanted in me? Or is this is this a belief I arrived at through past experiences? And when you get to that question, the interesting thing is, do I hold this belief because of how I interpreted past experiences? That may lead you into something like timeline therapy.
So, yeah, and fair enough. Like, I haven't done a lot of that sort of self-discovery in terms of like that modality, but the idea that I'm going to attempt to influence anybody based on my needs, understanding what my goal is, became the question I had. Because it became, again, like simplifying my process, which was, again, I'm looking at this belief in my mind about me and having this paradigm shift, or this experience of that. At least that's been the description of it. And then finally committing to a compromise. Like, okay, you got these things you want to do. You're not going to do them perfect. Just start. Just do it. And then it became about, well, and it was interesting because it was like, I don't know what the origin of, well, that's not true. That's not true. When I moved to Florida and I lived with my great grandfather, and I was ripped away from some really bad habits. Like, I took the opportunity to sort of process what was happening, and it was change, and change was always difficult. Change is always, that's tough. Like, I get like nervous like my dog when sometimes the waters get rough, and I beat myself up for it when it's happening, and then I always end up coming out of the other side of the storm better and more understanding, and so whatever that is. But this drive to want to mean something in what I do was the question, because I always thought on the surface, I am meant to do these things. I'm a song and dance man. That's my destiny. My sense of humor means that I am to be funny all the time. And that's my destiny. And, these were just like how I compartmentalize other people's opinions of me. And therefore, that was what my goals were, was to get into a job that would be that. And then when I started this, I had more questions. I had serious questions about people, and, surely enough, it got to a point where I realized how judgmental I had been on myself, and that translated in relationships outside of myself.
Judgmental of others.
Yes. And all of a sudden I was taking inventory of some of the lesser appealing decisions I've made in terms of like looking back, and like your life sort of flashes before your eyes. And I think that's commonly used, a term used when somebody's about to die, but I think it happens often. I think our life flashes before our eyes when either when we all of a sudden come to terms with some truth that we've been struggling with, and then all of a sudden you're looking back and you're like, oh shit, look at all that. But it was hard to like talk about it in an inclusive way, because it always sounded like I took responsibility. You know what I mean? But it wasn't just me. I'm surrounded by people who love and care well. And I think that's the part that some of these guru type people don't, not all of them, but some of them don't emphasize it. But, like Kevin Hart and The Rock, they talk hugely about their team, and they make it a point to honor the people who are in the boat with them. And that's who they brag about. And I think that, my experience with leadership and how that all sort of came together in the last 5 years of my life, and how important it became. And then to realize that, like, I don't necessarily want to experience that in what I'm doing now. And that's where I was for a while, was like, this is important to me. I don't know how to do it in what I'm doing now. And then it has evolved, because eventually I started to get physically healthier through the effort of the job I do now. So it was like I was able to get a better mind-body connection because of someone else's company, someone else's dream gave me an opportunity to put myself together. And then that finally lifted the shade of what it is I'm trying to get at. And I too want to have the kind of meaningful work in whatever I do. But I think that, long story longer.
Well, meaning doesn't have to reside in the workplace.
Yes.
It can reside in this podcast.
Yes, and that's the whole point I'm trying to make, is that's the daily success. Is if, let me put it in a spiritual way. For me, this is what I do. I pray daily. And I don't really get too concerned like I used to about what other people think of that, even when I say it, because I hear you hear your people or voices in your head of
One way of expressing that is what you're hearing is your undeveloped parts speak.
yeah.
Sometimes from a childlike place, with a childlike attitude, childlike belief system, and a childlike voice with childlike worries.
Yes.
Now, if you want some more Google-worthy phrases,
Oh my God.
there's parts theory or parts work,
Okay.
which focuses on identifying those undeveloped parts, giving them a voice, letting them speak their concerns, and asking them what they need.
Yeah. Yes. I think we've kind of talked about something similar or similarly. What was I saying just before you said that? You said giving them
Listening to the voices in your head, be critical of yourself.
Shit. I done lost it. Let me see. Let me try.
You can play it back.
I know, but I want my brain to work. So I'm giving myself a minute and being nice about it.
So close your eyes.
Let me see.
Having an impact, having meaning, doesn't have to happen in work.
Yeah, stop there. No. But until you have the gratitude for what life and the opportunities have been given to you now, the meaning or the translation of the meaning that you're pursuing, it's like you don't get the gold without the hard work, right? And nature has a way of holding truth to that.
Yes, and what I'm getting curious about is, can the growth in meaning occur in parallel with the growth in gratitude?
Yes, that's the point I'm trying to make is until you're grateful for some things that seem.
Well, that's the point I'm making. I'm trying to eliminate the word until by substituting it with the word parallel. Can it happen in parallel? Is it possible that you don't need an until?
Yeah.
Maybe a replacement word for until is both or together or at the same time.
Yeah, and that makes more sense emotionally.
Why does there have to be a qualifier or a gate of until when you're perfectly capable of doing both at the same time?
Yeah.
Incrementally, in small baby steps, in different areas, and make different progress on different parts and different paths.
Yeah, again, like this translates in exercise for me because it's like, my knee was hurting for a long time. And I summed it up to be that, well, it's arthritis, it's busted. You're just going to be in pain. And then I started working out and it was really, really hard and it hurt and I wasn't sure and I felt nervous, but I have a coach to help me work through that. And because I've been able to go to those places in my body, it's information that that I have clear frequency to. So I know that growth is happening and that it's painful and that I am the one who put it there. So then what's happened is when I'm around other people who reflect a pain that is familiar because of the linguistic effect it has, and the tone and the body language, you can kind of understand that there's a misfire happening in whomever it is you see this reflecting, and then it can trigger your perceived anxieties too.
Further symptoms.
Yeah. If you're experiencing pain that you're not familiar with, because they all get bad reception when they come to a mind that is cluttered. And that's what I've kind of, and I'm just talking to you, like we've been on here about a million different things, a million different ways. I don't know how I'm going to chop it up, but I'll just leave it like this.
So an interesting observation is you are currently in a state of growing mentally and physically. So you're doing that in parallel.
Yes.
So there's evidence that things like that can be done in parallel.
Yes. Yes.
The second interesting observation is a question. I won't say, I was going to ask, is it possible? But the answer to the question, is it possible, is always yes. So the more interesting question is, what's the probability? The question is, what's the probability that the problems you're experiencing with your knee is because that's where your body is storing trauma?
Yeah, and you know what, to speak to that, I had gone into a float tank and I made that sort of connection myself. I thought, you know what? There is information in my body parts. My legs are telling me something. My hands, my toes, every single part of me is telling me a story. I realized that in a float tank. And again, this is like a fragmented story, a process of how I came to the mind-body connection, because my lifestyle and how my relationship was with myself and everything around me, all my relationships were suffering from what I now have an understanding of a deficiency, a dysregulation, which means that it's not that I don't understand the concept. So that takes away the guilt for not being able to implement this fucking thing. Which is, I say it like that because it's like, God damn it, you're goddamn right, it's not my fucking fault. And yes, I can do something about it, right? So I'm celebrating. And with that, I also find a responsibility, like, well, you fucking found it. Go out there and sweat, because why not? Like, you want it, go get it. Shut up. It's not in your genes. It's not in, shut up. And if you got a problem beyond the health that you can control, then we'll go address that too. Like, do something, and I've taken cold showers every fucking day because it helps me make that hard decision up front. I confront the anxiety and say, yeah, we're doing it. Sorry, we're going. Not sorry. You feel whatever you want. And that's the thing, is like with that historical self, it's like, you better strap on, dude, because I've made a decision. We're going. And a multi-layered experience, you experience it on different levels.
So the one of the things I put on probably both Facebook and LinkedIn recently, because of the book I'm reading, but what I posted was, the answer to how is yes. The answer to when is we just decided to.
Yeah. It's putting that foot in front of the other. It's momentum. And it's fundamental. And it never loses precedence. Ever. It's always the way back. One foot in front of the other. And you don't let the monster or scary thing deter you from pushing that foot out there and taking a hit.
Another way of expressing that is you move from the complicated to the simple by changing your story.
Yeah. And you build your strength in the foundation of that first step. You know, and that's the thing. You do that with research. You will not approach a problem until you've had, I don't know what your quota is, but until you've filled some understanding, some level of understanding about a subject, you don't feel safe, nor do you even approach certain things because, in all fairness, like, you wouldn't want, well, I won't even try to, this is going to use a sports analogy, but that's the thing is you say, you know, some are more advanced in ways that others aren't. And that's the thing is like, you're right. So that being said, like, you put the team together, and I just think if that could be, if physical fitness could be implemented into every industry, I mean, we're going towards utopia at this point, but let's just say that our mental health and our systems of managing them have improved, and now people can have free gym memberships and free fitness trainers and, you know, coaches, yes,
in business,
life coaches, wellness coaches, all the coaches you could ever want.
I was in a job interview with a state job, and after the interviewer listened to me, they said, because they were looking for an agile coach, and after the interview, the person said, "Rusty, you sound like more like a life coach than an agile coach." I didn't say it, but what I wanted to say at the time was, well, have you ever considered the possibility that if you solved some of your life coaching problems, you wouldn't be having some of these business problems?
Yes. That's what I mean. That's what I mean about your industry. It's like, that's where it's going, is mental health and the support of community. That's where it's going. And I take a lot of pride in seeing, you know, seeing what kind of a horse we're riding on, because we're going to that future. And, you know, I probably beat this to death, but, you know, nature said, hey, you're better off if you're healthy. Just saying. You know, the face mask, that's more for show, you know?
So there might be two parts here. There might be the nature saying you're better off if you exercise, but the universe might be saying, well, what lessons can we teach you if you don't?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a masculine, feminine thing.
Sure. But, you know, like, it's funny, we, as observers, we admire powerful animals. We admire the lions and the cougars and not the old ladies that like young men, but the elephants, the majestic, powerful.
Sharks, whales.
Yeah. Because of their performance and their
true to self,
their inherent, like, skill, that it's what makes them magical. Is like, holy shit, life produced that, a weapon that, you know, an unbiased weapon that will rip. So you think there's that out there, and we admire it, we put it on a pedestal because we are inherently a species that yearns for optimization. That's what technology is. Automating all the little shit. That's what exercise is. It's enhancing the muscles that are meant to do the work so that the little muscles can live longer, or they're optimized. So it's like, again, we're looking at the patterns, the biology of reality. The patterns are there, biology. The world reflects what we are. We are part of the planet. We're not, with as many spaceships as we want, we are part of this planet. can't escape that. I mean, you can't. You can't. You might get as far as locked up in a mental home, but you're still a pile of flesh that we got to deal with, you know?
I can't remember the right Google-worthy phrase, so I'll get as close as I can. If you Google something called the architecture of patterns or pattern architecture, there's a guy, an architect, an actual architect who wrote a book, I think his first name was Chris or Christopher, who looked at patterns of buildings based on not on how they were designed, but how they were used. So an architect might have designed a building to influence people one way, but people decided to go in an entirely different direction. And you could see that where traffic was designed to go this way, it ended up going the exact opposite way. And he got curious about how that works. What can I learn from that to design better buildings? And there are, I wish I could remember what it's called. There are patterns of human behavior and human relationships in the workplace where that you can learn about that'll teach you ideas that people come up with that are good intentioned, but are really part of what's called an anti-pattern. So people will look at something and come up with what they think is a good idea, but if you're a student of patterns, you come to learn that what you think is a good idea is an anti-pattern because of its unintended consequences. You're doing it for what you think is the right reason for the right effect, but it has the opposite effect or an unintended effect. And so that's part of the study of patterns is what are good, healthy patterns and what are anti-patterns. That anti-patterns evolve because you don't understand how systems work. You don't understand systems thinking. So that's something I've been interested in is in terms of teamwork, business, relationships, how we work together. The Agile part of the Agile community has identified patterns and anti-patterns of Agile and Scrum. And it's a way of identifying what produces unintended consequences. And it can be simple things like what you name something. And that goes back to the power of words.
See, this pattern-seeking, conceptualizing process, as far as what I've learned about ADHD, is, and it's repeated often, you know, in all the material about it, that it's a dysregulation. But what it looks like on the outside is a dismay for what somebody else wants from you. It looks like a disobedience of sorts.
Not meeting expectations.
Yeah.
Others.
Yeah. But when you don't understand systems, how they are, like the brain system, and you don't understand the importance of, you know, of what is supposed to be, where it's supposed to be in order for you to be able to categorize or to sort of compartmentalize or to chunk in a way that you can function with that information in your mind, right? And I just think that why do I keep losing this thought? I think I've been talking too long.
Patterns.
Yeah, these patterns that happen.
Systems and how we think.
The emotional regulation of processing. That's what the ADHD mind struggles with. Because it's not the information coming in, it's how to feel about it.
Which is storytelling.
It's a
interpretation.
It's a jump off of a ledge that's not even there. Because you think you're hanging on something. It's this nauseating sort of whole body experience, where you're just like, I gotta do something now. And I can, like I said, life flashes before your eyes. I remember so many times I was pacing back and forth like a crazy man, crying, pleading with the universe, please get me out of this situation, I promise. How many toilet bowls I've hugged in my life, regretting a night of alcohol. And it's like never thinking to ask why. Why are you puking? Because you drank so much. Why did you need to drink? What are you doing? What is it? What do you need? And then I started to realize after I kind of was able to look back and ask those questions, like that timeline experience you were saying, I've kind of done that in my mind. Like, what were you doing? Like, what do you need? And I answer to myself, I don't know. I just don't feel right. I just don't feel right about this. I feel like I need to worry. I'm not sure why, but I need to worry. I need to call. I need to call again. I need to call again. And it's this inability to like get through to that person. This is why it's important not to try and fix somebody, because that's a tough conversation, man. And if you can't do it for yourself in the areas that you struggle in, you don't have a lot of business trying to do it for anybody else. And I realized that I was the kind of person who was always in somebody else's business. I always needed to know what was going on. I always felt like I needed to know so I could help. I've let that go because the truth is, like, I can only handle what I can handle. And I've signed up for the relationships I'm in. And if I get to make new friends and I can sustain those relationships, I consider myself even more blessed. But what people do to find balance is a personal story, a personal journey.
Not to be judged.
Not to be judged. And that's the thing, I think, the old struggle telling the new, the young, is listen. I'm doing what I got to do to take care of me. I've had to do this with mom. Like, okay, good luck. We'll see ya. I love you, and it breaks your heart in a lot of ways when you have to put space in a dangerous situation for somebody. But like, the only way I'm going to be there when the shit comes down is if I take care of myself now, and align things so that all aspects of my currency, all the currencies I carry, are bringing in more than I'm putting out, because I commit to putting out. And that's what I was trying to say earlier is not, I don't commit to putting out to just anybody, but I mean, putting the energy out of asking the universe simply by holding space for other people who are on a path or on the other end of a prayer, is like I seem to put it lately. But like, I pray that whatever the life energy is works through me. I pray that I'm a conduit for a reflection of the miracle, of this vibrant existence, this 2020 thing. It's seemingly daunting, but it's amazing that we are here. Many, 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 many people have died, and we're here and we're arguing. Fine, but I'm good. I don't need to argue.
And we create conditions for more to die.
Here's the thing, Dad. Nobody knows what you're doing behind doors. Nobody knows if you're going places you shouldn't be, touching things. It's your business. And if you don't want to be out there with negligence, then you got to do what you have to do. You're fortunate that you can do those things. You can do a majority of your day's work from here. But it's hard to be so hard-lined about what the behavior should be, because I got to go out every day and touch things, step on things, you name it. Like, I'm exposed, but I'm eating well. I'm monitoring myself, my bad habits, my mental capacity, my stress, all the loose ends a person can have. I've got some sort of monitoring system going. I'm not saying it's all tied down. I'm certainly exposed to the world in other ways, but like I hear and see people argue about the hygiene, and the reality of it is, like, nobody knows what the virus is doing. Nobody knows when or if we're going to come up with, and that doesn't mean kill your grandma, right? All that means is there's uncertainty in the air, and there are downsides to this situation that is hurting people, not just the death from the virus, but the impact of society under the pressure. And, an
isolated society is becoming more and more isolated.
Mm-hmm. And who am I to throw a fit in fucking public? Because I didn't take care of something I could have taken care of. I am a danger to myself and other people. So if I go to the store and I forgot my face mask and I fucking throw a fit, and then somebody else having a bad day and something happens, I'm the only one to blame. So again, like, I think when we're out and we feel uncomfortable with the situation and the people, then we do something about it. Otherwise, like, you just got to take it easy, because people are at different places with this stuff, working, not working, live with sick people, don't live with sick people, have lost somebody, haven't lost somebody. And, it's like, things could always be worse. Things could be better too. It's a win-win if you take better care of yourself. You wash your hands and wear a face mask. I mean, you're a nice person for possibly not getting somebody else sick. It's a win-win. So I just hope people realize that this isn't about social distancing or surviving the pandemic. It's about honoring life. That's what it's about. It's what the masks are about. It's like, hey, we care. We care that people breathe.
Probably the biggest reason I wear it is out of a sign of respect for others.
Well, it's exactly what I'm saying. It's the same notion of, hey, I care, and I'm here, and I want to help, and I want to be here as long as possible. God damn, that was a lot of talking. But thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I love you.
Love you too.
Bye.
You're doing good work.
Thank you. Shit. Fuck it, I'll just put it later. Here. Oh shit, turn it up. Man.